there is an ongoing battle between the Premier League and Manchester City, and there's a chance that one part of the charges might have been dropped. Now, imagine this: a legal showdown so big, so complex, that its verdict could change the entire future of football. Just imagine it for a second. I'll give you 2 seconds to think about this. Now, the verdict could change the entire football world, like completely nature, the future of the entire football world. For years, the global conversation has been dominated by a single case. I mean, the Premier League versus Manchester City. And just this week, we saw a major plot twist. A settlement was announced between the two sides over a separate but still massive legal battle. Now, this news sent shockwaves, through the sport. But if you thought that this meant the end of the story, then you're dead wrong, basically. Because this latest development, while significant, is just a prelude, a warm up act. I mean, the main event is still to come. We're talking about the unprecedented case involving a staggering 115 charges against Manchester City that could end with a punishment so severe it might redefine the Premier League forever. Today, we're going to pull back the curtain on this high stakes legal clash, legal chess match, and break down what the recent settlement really means and explain why all eyes are still fixed on the verdict that's about to drop. Now, the first part of this whole conversation is the rule book. I mean, how the game is played off the pitch. Before we dive into this drama, let's actually talk about or get a handle of the rules of the game. The Premier League operates under a set of financial regulations known as the Profitability and Sustainability Rules, or PSR. And think of it as the league's version of a strict budget, right? The core principle is straightforward. Clubs have to spend what they earn over a 3-year period or 3-year rolling period. A club is generally only allowed to lose a maximum of £105 million. And if they've been in the lower leagues recently, the number drops to £39 million. So, for example, if a club, has been playing, for example, in the Premier League, right, and then they get relegated, that loss reduces to £39 million over a 3-year rolling period. Now, the world of football finance isn't as simple as everyone would think. One of the key tricks of this trade is a little accounting, right? It's a little accounting term called amortization. When a club signs a player for, say, £100 million on a 5-year contract, they don't immediately record the £100 million loss. Instead, they spread the cost over the length of the contract. So in their books, that's a loss of only about £20 million each year. Now, basically, this maneuver helps clubs balance their books and stay within the crucial loss limits. And I've also heard situations where certain other clubs, basically, when they make such sale of £100 million, it is recorded as profit for them on their books. Meanwhile, due to amortization, the club that is buying records it as, for example, in the £100 million case, as 20 million a year. Now, over a 5-year period, rather. Now, where the things really get interesting is when the club's ownership group is also a major source of its revenue. This is where the associated party transaction, or APT, rules come into play. The Premier League introduced these rules to make sure that any commercial deals a club makes with a company linked to its owners are valued at fair market value. This means this was actually a direct response to concerns about financial doping that most clubs actually do, the practice of artificially inflating revenues to get around the spending rules. And it was these very APT rules that sparked the first major, firestorm between Manchester City and the Premier League. Now, with regards to the settlement, which is the second part of this research and in-depth analysis, for the past year, Manchester City and the Premier League have been locked in a bitter legal dispute over the associated party transaction rules. City challenged them, arguing that they were unlawful and unfairly discriminated against clubs with wealthy non-traditional ownership models. Now, here is the part that you might have missed. City had already won an independent uh, arbitration tribunal case, basically. So an independent arbitration tribunal had already ruled that the Premier League's original APT rules from 2021 to 2024 were void and unenforceable in their entirety. Now, the tribunal found that the rules were discriminatory because they treated different forms of funding, like shareholder loans, differently from other types of income, like sponsorship deals. So when the Premier League and Manchester City announced this week or last week, as at the time of recording, that they had reached a settlement, the city with City stating that they now accept that the current APT rules are void and binding. It is not that the defeat that it might sound like on the surface. This was a tactical resolution. With City having already secured massive victory, the settlement likely came with unannounced concessions from the Premier League. For the league, it was a way to avoid another, potentially damaging legal verdict and to save face. But for City, he allowed them to terminate the dispute and move forward with lucrative new commercial deals that they are looking to secure. Now, the brevity of the public settlement and the agreement that neither the Premier League nor the club will be making any further statements of any further comments speaks volumes about the quiet compromises that were made. Now, the main event, which is basically the 115 charges, the 115 charges, and that's the reason why we're making this, analysis, to understand where the APT stands versus the 115 charges and whether the 115 charges has anything or any role to play. But let's actually be clear. Let's absolutely be clear here. The settlement has no direct bearing on the other. So based on this settlement, it has no bearing on the other far more serious legal case. This was simply about, the validity of future rules. The real battle is about the alleged historical wrongdoing, the 115 charges that have hung over Manchester City's head since February of 2023. The Premier League's allegations are unprecedented in their scope and complexity. Now, the charge covers a 9-year period from 2009 to 2018 and can be broken down into few key areas, 4 to be exact. There are 54 charges of failing to provide accurate financial information, specifically regarding sponsorship revenues and operating costs. That's number 1. Number 2, there are 14 charges related to a failure to provide accurate financial information, specifically regarding sponsorship revenues and operating costs. And then there is the next one, which is then there is the 14 charges related to failure to accurately report the player and manager compensation. The Premier League alleges that there are secret contracts for individuals like former manager Roberto Mancini, with payments potentially being made through third parties. And then there are 5 charges of failing to comply with UEFA financial regulations and 7 charges for breaking the Premier League's own PSR rules. Now, the final charge or final category of this charge is 35 charges of failing to cooperate with the Premier League's investigation, which has been, ongoing since December of 2018. Now, this case is not a rehash of City's previous battle with UEFA. That one was sorted. They already won that at the Court of Arbitration for Sport, and the case was thrown out because most of the alleged breaches were time barred under UEFA's 5-year statute of limitation. Now, the Premier League, however, has no such cutoff period, allowing them to bring charges going all the way back to 2009. And that's what makes this case more formidable. Now, the 12-week hearing of these charges concluded back in December 2024, but we are still waiting for a verdict. Despite the hopeful statement from people like Pep Guardiola. The timeline has also been pushed back as well repeatedly. The silence isn't a sign of weakness, it's a reflection of the immense volume and complexity of the evidence that the independent commission has to meticulously analyze. The verdict is now expected to be to be ready in around October, possibly during the international break of either end of October 2025 or something. So that's like in a month's time. Now, the signals, which is like the next part, the final part of this whole analysis, the signals, the reading of the tea leaves, basically. If the APT settlement and the 115 charges are separate legal cases, why does the settlement matter? That's the point of this whole analysis, right? Because it gives us a powerful look into Manchester City's legal mindset, the club's willingness to challenge the Premier League on its own rules and to emerge with favorable resolution. It demonstrates a consistent, formidable, and successful litigious posture, and it sends a clear message. City is not only prepared to defend itself, but it's also confident enough to challenge the very authority of its regulator. But the club's confidence isn't just its legal strategy. It's written all over the actions in the transfer window, right? In the transfer market with its own commercial dealings. Experts have noted that the club that was genuinely expecting severe punishment like a massive points deduction or even relegation would be much more cautious. Yet, Man City have continued to spend on a very high level, right? Separately shelling out, reportedly shelling out over 300 million pounds on new recruits in 2025 alone. Now, they've also secured massive long-term commercial deals, including the 1 billion 10-year sponsorship with Puma. These moves are powerful public signals. This observable behavior suggests a deep-seated belief within the club that they will ultimately be vindicated in the most consequential case of all. Now, to wrap this all up and just to bring this to a summary, the APT settlement may have brought to an end one of the disputes, right? And this is basically with regards to while we're awaiting the final verdict, but it was just a skirmish. The real war is far from over. The eventual verdict of the independent commission will be the defining moment for English football. The Premier League rules gives the commission the authority to impose any sanctions it sees fit, from a fine to a points deduction, or even the most severe punishments of all, expulsion from the league, which is what everybody is expecting. There is no predefined sanctions grid, right? There's no predefined sanctions grid with all of this, making the outcome truly unpredictable. The scale of the charges against City is unprecedented, and so will be the judgment, whatever it may be. Now, even if the verdict is delivered and the legal saga is not likely to end, both sides have the right to appeal the decision, a process that would inevitably delay the implementation of any sanctions even further. Now, basically, you look at the case, once there's a verdict delivered in October, you'll see that this whole legal battle will not end for something that started somewhere around 2023, 2022. Then both sides will also have the right to appeal, which will further extend the process and obviously the impending sanctions. The Premier League's ability to evolve and adapt its financial framework has already been held in a legal holding pattern for years because of this conflict. Now, the final verdict, now anticipated for October 2025, will determine much more than just the fate of one club. It will be the ultimate test of the Premier League's authority, a definitive moment that will decide whether the league has the legal power to enforce its own rules or whether its control has been irrevocably challenged. The entire world of football is holding its breath and waiting for the final verdict of this case. So let me know your thoughts and feelings in the comment section about this whole Manchester City situation between the Premier League and Manchester City. We're going to continue to bring you updates as case may be, and we like to do these kinds of deep dives because we just don't want to run into a situation where we're making conclusions or making assertions or even assumptions with regards to this case. We'll just basically bring you deep details and, make deep research in order to find, the answers that you need to questions like this, because you don't want to come out and drop stuff without having knowledge of it. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you haven't already, please do like, share, subscribe, so you don't have to miss anything, especially with these kinds of deep dives. You will see more videos like this, more long form videos, and even our shorts as well. So thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for liking. Please do smash the like button as well if you haven't already, and I'll see you on the next one. Take care, goodbye, and God bless. Thank you for watching elPablo FC.